go by Khan or Coach Khan. It's a lot easier to remember. I'm expert in change management and performance improvement. I have my own HR consulting firm by the name of Fresh Biz Solutions, and I am honored to be the friend and co-writer of Dr. Ilya Gurguris, with which we wrote the book, 7 Keys to Navigating a Crisis, a practical guide to emotionally dealing with pandemics and other disasters. Doc?
Thank you, Coach. I'm Dr. Ilya Gurguris, President and founder of the Happiness Center, and international keynote speaker. I get a chance to travel the world and speak about happiness and wellness, and the #1 best-selling author of the book, 7 Paths to Lasting Happiness. And this is my second book that I co-authored with my good friend, Coach Khan. And obviously very timely. We were very strongly impressed to write this book now, not wait until next November or 2021, and to try to help as many people as we can. And we got it out in May, and ever since then we have an interview, radio, television, podcast, webinar every single day for the last 2 months. It's been crazy.
So tell us why you guys decided to write this book.
Well, the big thing about this was, as Dr. Ilya said, we wanted to help people. First and foremost, it was an opportunity for us to be able to kind of give back. At a time of crisis like this, you look around and you say, okay, what can I do to lift others up? What can I do to offer something? And from our skill set of expertise in positive psychology and change management, this is a crisis, and it's actually not just one, but multiple crises. So we're dealing with 4 compounding issues at the same time. We've got COVID-19 impacting us physically. We have the emotional and mental fallout from that, with an increase of about 800% in the first few months following the crisis of people reporting problems, mental health issues, anxiety, stress, depression. We have the forced pause now on the economy has created a situation where now we're dealing with financial insecurities and problems, unemployment, underemployment. And fourth, we have the rising racial and social right now injustices that are happening that are creating so much stress and problems in our communities. So with that in mind, we decided that, you know what, we need to find a way to give back to people, to help them. They get enough of the statistics, they get enough of all of this other information. What they need is practical advice about how to cope with things and how to get to the other side in a better way. Doc, you want to add anything?
And mind you, James, I was going to say, and mind you, James, that human beings, we're very resilient by nature. We've handled other crises before. Certainly not in our lifetime, a crisis like the pandemic. We probably have to go back to the Second World War when we had a world crisis like this. So we can handle 1 or 2 crises at the same time, but it's very difficult when you have 4 crises happening simultaneously. And that's not taking into account perhaps any personal crisis like a relationship issue or a divorce or a health of a child or whatever. We're not even counting those. So that's why people are overwhelmed and stressed. Like Coach Khan said, the depression, anxiety, and stress is at an all-time high, 800%. These are the statistics as of the end of May. We don't have the June statistics yet. And mind you, these are all new people. These are not people that had pre-existing conditions. These are people that, as a result of the pandemic, are really, really struggling. And that's why we got the book out, and it's helping people a lot. It's critically acclaimed, but we're just getting started. We want to spread the message far and wide, and it certainly is being spread beyond the United States. We've had interviews with India, with Greece, with Holland, with South Africa. So the demand, this is not an American issue, I guess is what I'm saying. It's a global issue.
So, incredibly well written. Tell me a little bit about the writing process for the book.
Well, no, go ahead, Doc. I mean, you're the one that initiated this. It's all your fault.
Well, yeah, I had a very strong impression in mid-March that I need to get a book out, and I called my writing partner. Coach Khan and I write for Arianna Huffington's Thrive Global platform, so we were used to writing together. And I said, Khan, we got to get this book out. I'm going to start writing tomorrow morning. Are you in or are you out? And without hesitating, he says, I'm in. And the message was very clear. We got to get this book out in 45 days. Now, mind you, my first book took 3 years to write. So getting a book out in 45 days from conception to actually publication is insane. But we did nothing, eat, sleep, no sleep, breathe, the book. We got it out May 1st. The ebook, the paperback came out a few days later, and it's been nonstop ever since. But there's a reason for that. We have a great team collaboratively. I'm a big picture guy. Coach Khan is his attention to detail, almost to a perfectionistic, degree. There was no ego involved whatsoever. If he has a good idea, great. If I have a good idea, good. And it was truly a collaborative effort. Otherwise, there's no way you can get a book out in 45 days. It's not even physically feasible. So that's how we got it done.
Yeah, and when you add to that, James, then the fact that, our background kind of lends itself. As I mentioned, from my perspective, my expertise is in helping organizations, teams, leadership deal with change that impacts them, whether they're driving it or not. From Dr. Ilia's perspective, he has a positive psychology and a background and the ability to help. He's helped people individually deal with a lot of personal crises, but he's also been there, as have I, following other crises in the past. Dr. Ilia hadn't said it, but he is certified by the Red Cross to deal with a lot of problems from a psychological standpoint following a crisis. He went to Haiti after the earthquakes. 20 years ago when Columbine happened, he was there helping a lot of the students and the faculty after that. From my perspective, I've lived through a number of those different disasters. I went to New Orleans after Katrina as part of our organization to help a little bit in our own way with the rebuilding process there. So we've seen the devastation that happens after a big crisis. But this, like we said before, is one of those situations where it's really, really on a whole nother scale.
This book
and the
is...
difference, I think,
Go ahead.
with
COVID
is that there's no end in sight. Like most crises have a beginning, a middle, and an end. You get hurricane warnings, for example. It's coming. It gets there. It makes landfall. It's destructive. But then it passes. With this, there's no end in sight. We were told that come summertime, the pandemic is not going to be able to survive. It's going to diminish because of the heat and so on. That's not true. We have more cases now than we've ever had before. And there's no true end in sight. They're talking about a second wave in the fall, September, or maybe even November when the flu season begins. So people like to know, James, if I told you, James, the pandemic will end October 31st on Halloween, there'll be nothing else after that. You could say, man, I've already endured 3.5 months of this mess. I think I can do it. If I have a target date, I think with the help of others, we got to help one another. I think we can do it. When there's no end in sight, we're no longer running a marathon. We're running an ultra marathon. So that's what makes this so difficult to handle.
We've got two great guests joining us today. They join us live here on Skype Audio to discuss this incredible, incredible new book. So what do you want readers to take away from your writing this great book, gentlemen?
Well, I think the first thing that they need to remember is there is hope. Yes, there's a lot of problems, but we've overcome problems in the past, and we will overcome this one as well. There is hope, and there is a way to build our emotional resilience if we tap into the positive side of ourselves and follow the simple 7 keys that we have in the book. They will help your audience. They will help the readers be able to build that emotional muscle that they need to kind of guide them through the process. The book is written in a very simple format, easily to consume, and with very practical advice after each chapter of what they can do to really help them and help themselves and in turn help others. Doc?
No, I have nothing. Yeah, I think that's, I have nothing to add actually other than you said it perfectly right. I do want to share with the audience, however, that there are typically 4 personality types when dealing with a crisis. And the first one is what we call the victim, which is, why is this happening to me? They're just obsessed, they're depressed, they feel like they're getting picked on. So that's the victim. The second one is the critic. And the critic, regardless of what the federal, state, or local governments or the World Health Organization or even the UN says, they criticize everything. For example, James, you should wear a mask when you go outside, always. Well, that's stupid. Okay, never wear a mask when you go outside. Well, that's stupid too. In other words, no matter what comes up, they criticize it. Then we have the third personality type, which is called, we like to call them the bystander. a good person, mind you, but someone who's overwhelmed and frozen in fear, the deer with the headlights look, and really does not know what to do and therefore does nothing. And that's what these first three types have in common. They offer no solutions, no positive outlook, no moving forward. Then we get to the fourth type, which we call the navigator. And that's the premise of this book. And the navigator, of course, begins with a positive attitude, like Coach Kahn said, practices self-care from the get-go and takes care of him or herself by emotionally, mentally, physically, and spiritually, is aware of their environment and relies on their intuition, is flexible and adaptable. And this is a key point. There's no way we can go through this crisis and do the same things we used to do in the past and expect to have successful results, because this is a whole different world. So we must be flexible and adaptable. And then, of course, they prepare for the crisis, they take initiative, and they move into action. And ultimately, they provide service and kindness to those around them because their batteries are full and they have the ability to help somebody else who's less fortunate than they are. And in essence, those are the 7 keys to navigating a crisis. And one more thing I wanted to add, too. All 4 of those personality types, by the way, exist within each human being, just so we're clear. So when this whole thing came down, I had speaking engagements throughout the world. They all got canceled, James, one after another, back to back to back. And did I feel like a victim and the poor me? You're darn right I did. And have I been critical of several decisions that the government has made? I have. However, we don't want to stay stuck in those. Be the critic for an hour, get it out of your system, and then pivot and become a navigator and begin to move forward with your life successfully. If you want to feel like a victim, do that for an hour or two, but you don't want to stay stuck there because you're not happy, number one, that way. And we're asking people not only to navigate, not only to just survive the crisis, but we believe you can actually thrive through a crisis. This whole book was as a result of Coach Kahn and I navigating through our initial shock and saying, what can we do? We hadn't planned on writing a book in 2020. That wasn't the case. So I feel like this is important for your audience to hear. You don't have to stay stuck. And by the way, there's a huge difference between danger and fear. If somebody comes up to you and I and they cough in our face, that's dangerous. I mean, that's not a political statement. That's a factual medical statement. However, fear is not your friend. Fear is paralyzing. Fear is debilitating. And you don't want to make decisions, life decisions, or even business decisions based on fear. So let's separate those two. Respect the danger and be mindful of that and protect yourself in whatever ways you know how. But don't give in to fear because then your life will be miserable.
Well, let's wrap up here with you guys. My next guest is calling. I've got to go before we do that. How do we find you guys online, get your book, everything else?
Well, the book is available on Amazon in Kindle and in paperback right now. It's easy to get to. If you want to find us, you can either use our websites, www.freshbizsolutions.com or thehappinesscenter.com, or look us up under Coach Kahn or The Happiness Doctor on LinkedIn. You can find us there.
Fantastic. Well, I appreciate the time. Thanks for being with us, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
And we are going to go to a break. We got our next guest coming up.